Hello, it's Scott Manley here with episode 18 of Galileo Conquest, and the space camp attendees are heading home. Still in one piece, but the plan is of course to split them into many other pieces. Split the spacecraft into many other pieces so that it can safely land without worrying about falling over or any of those other inconvenient things that frequently befall spacecraft, which are very tall and thin when they try to land. No, we're not running SpaceX here, we're running Space Y. As in, why are we doing it this way? Well, we're doing it with the rocket engines because we're rocket scientists. No, this is a long, thin rocket, and to slow it down, we decided to have rocket engines, right? Because the rocket engines will give us about 1.5 kilometers per second of delta V. That should slow us down sufficiently that we don't have to worry about the dubious thermal properties of these crew cabins. Now, as I'm slowing down, what I want to do is get the spacecraft running at a velocity below that of the parachutes. They are all red right now. And you notice that I was falling sideways, so I kind of decided that I would flatten out the spacecraft initially because I thought it was acting like a wing. But in the end we slowed down enough and I didn't need to worry about it. So, assuming the position, slowing things down. The thrust to weight ratio never goes above 1 here. This is just so that we can slow things down instead of flying through the atmosphere too quickly. So now we ditch the rockets, fire those, and every time the parachutes deploy, we detach that stage. This is not the most comfortable deployment process, but it does look pretty awesome if you ask me. I kind of like the way that worked. And I'm very glad that I didn't run out of altitude or anything, because that was... that's an entirely legitimate possibility that I might be coming down too quickly and not have time to deploy everything. There, look at that. It's beautiful. That is absolutely beautiful. We have 16 space camp attendees, all in their own 4 crew pods. And of course, the first class is the actual experienced pilots. They get to hang out and, they get to land first, they get the nice views. I mean, surely this is a place where you'd want to be rather than in these tin cans that we have. And truthfully, they're probably starting to smell after 40 days in space with 4 crew to each can. Well, I guess that one has 2. They clearly paid for a seat upgrade or whatever. They're riding in the exit row, that's what it is. It's kind of cool seeing lots of stuff floating in the air. That's always one of the fun parts of Kerbal Space Program. Let's see if we can actually see looking out the window. Not in that one. Let's try switching to another person with another view. So we double click on the window and there are our neighbours. We should have probably rotated the spacecraft a little more so we could have seen that, but these things have zero control at all. So yeah, we just now accelerate time, carefully bring them down to the surface. Incidentally, be careful when you're doing this, because if one of the things is on the ground when you time accelerate, you can kill everyone. It's something I've seen in the past before. But this is the first space camp graduation ceremony. Congratulations! Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Okay, so now we just have to recover all the other ones while they are listening to, pomp and circumstance in a loop. Because, they're graduates. And a few of them, now that we've finished that, will come over and join my space program. So they will be full-on, honest-to-God, legit astronauts. Look, we have Lolong and Karuna and Lenley. I think those were all part of that mission. So I have grown my core of astronauts, and now I need to find something else to do. Bring 32 tourists to our hotel? Well, that's only twice as many as I flew in the last mission. How hard could this be? Yes, this monstrous vehicle uses a composite crew capsule to carry 32 passengers plus a crew of 3. It's able to stay in orbit for about 2 weeks. Of course, people start to get a little cramped before then. And the good news is it isn't twice as much as the previous one, so I guess we're making some kind of win there. So the theory is, by spreading this thing out, we've increased the surface area on the bottom, so we should be able to survive re-entry. We have heat shields instead of deceleration thrusters. We don't have as many parachutes, and we have engines. Oh, and we have air brakes. So this is a big test. Obviously, I'm hoping this will work, but you never know. So yeah, just basically taking this up into orbit. We're using the boosters as main engines there. They're quite expensive, but they are exceptionally powerful. In fact, I believe they are the most powerful engine that I have access to. So we're on this suborbital trajectory, and what I'm going to do is adjust the orbit so that the descending node, the node where I cross the target orbit of the target station, it more or less coincides with the apoapse. So there I will combine these two maneuvers now into a plane change maneuver and a orbit circularization maneuver. So remember, when you're adding two vectors are at 90 degrees to each other, right? It's like Pythagoras. So you're adding the squares of the two, and then you're taking the square root. So it's much more efficient to combine maneuvers. It's just vector math. Anyway, yeah, the way these engines are kind of combined, it does make me think of the Proton rocket, where I don't know if you've seen how the Proton rocket stages, but if you look at the first stage on the Proton, there are like 6 rocket stages that come out, 6 rocket engines that come out the side. And a lot of people think that those are strap-on boosters, and they're not. Like, the whole thing just stages off and gets dropped behind. In this case, I dropped the 4 engines, and because they are held on, because they don't share a common root part, they all float away. As in, they all float away from each other. Anyway, look, we've got ourselves into orbit. We are on a very tight inclination, relative inclination. And of course, the debris falls from the sky, looking spectacular as ever in the early morning light. Time to place your bet. Will any of these survive? Does falling from the sky at almost Mach 1 do bad things to spacecraft? Of course it does. But can they survive it? Whoa, and it's doing a triple... I don't know how many backflips. I'm losing count of backflips. This thing is doing a lot of backflips. And it pauses to think even halfway through the backflips. And it... Oh my god, this thing is really going for the Olympic prize. And it lands and survives. In fact, 2 pieces survive. I need to send my scientists out there to get samples of that material. So obviously the next stage is orbit phasing to make sure that we end up rendezvousing with the field at the right time, because of course the field is where everybody wants to be. It's the most exciting feature of the island, right? So this upper stage is actually quite capable, like 1.3 kilometers per second. This could almost do a free return around one of these moons and come back with a fairly large population. Although I question whether the heat shields would manage it, given that it already gets pretty hot with those engines sticking out. So there, we're going to fly past it pretty close. We make just some slight changes there. Now, the next thing is, in designing this, I used linear RCS thrusters, linear Vernier motors actually, which means they use regular fuel and monopropellant. They're pretty powerful. However, I completely forgot to include braking thrusters on this, and I kind of realize as I'm approaching that I don't actually have any way to slow down without turning the spacecraft around, or if I do, it's a whole lot less powerful. So the docking was a very, very slow and methodical maneuver, at least compared to my usual docking. So obviously cancelling out my lateral velocity as much as possible, and then targeting the port. Turning around to say hello to the docking port. Hi, I'll be your docking port. I will dock with you very soon, and we will have fun, and you will hold me in your firm grasp and we shall orbit like one around this planet, and nothing shall pull us asunder. At least not until after the passengers have enjoyed the facilities available at the field. So actually you may not need to hold on to me for very long after all. So yeah, while this design has no brakes, and we will fix that in a future design update, it does maneuver really nicely. You know, I might actually take this design and replace those crew cabins with fuel tanks, because I think it would make a great cargo ship as well. So yeah, these guys, they're visiting the hotel. They're appreciating its many facilities, like the kettle and the travel scrabble. Oh, wait, no, we left the travel scrabble behind. Yeah, they'll have fun for the next week or so. Of course, I could just bring them back right away, because I immediately got a contract saying, can you bring them home? But I think at the very least it makes sense to wait, like, at least 1 week. But I do now have enough money to upgrade the most important parts of the base now to full level. So yeah, full on R&D magnificence level 3, administration building, don't care about that. Mission control, I shall surely upgrade that, not that I've hit the limit ever. That's fully upgraded, that's fully upgraded. Vehicle assembly, it's fully upgraded. Astronaut complex, sure, we've got some cash. Yeah, I think we pretty much can upgrade everything that we care about, and a couple of things we don't care about. And then, thanks to the magic of time acceleration, we can give our friends in space a week. Oh, well, a week to remember. A week in which they will actually be reintroduced to their lunches more than once, because space sickness is like that. And the real question is, will I be able to bring this thing home? Well, I certainly have the Delta V, so I can bring it back to the atmosphere. And the heat shield should protect us, and I'm hoping it'll be aerodynamically stable because I have these air brakes at the top, and we have just enough thrust from those little front thrusters that are built into the capsule. So I guess that's nice, because otherwise I wouldn't have had any way to reverse there. I would have had to have just accelerated time and waited for the spacecraft to magically phase through it. So the next thing I'm going to do is run time forward. Well, I'm going to move the spacecraft into a slightly different orbit. So of course I'm decelerating, which means I will end up accelerating, but that's the way I'm going to go. And I'm just going to wait until the space center is close to the right location. Well, close to a location that I know. Remember, the value of the stuff returned depends upon how close you are to the space center, and I would like to be as close as possible. So now we're burning the engines to bring our periaps down to about the 30-kilometer mark. You see that wobble there? That is a consequence of having 4 different engines out there that don't quite all agree on what way they're going to go. So this thing is a little unstable in that point. Maybe there's a way I can actually put the main engine down the middle or something. Not really sure at this point. What I am sure about is for maximum aerodynamic stability, I pumped all the fuel from those top tanks down into the bottom tanks. So that should at least help keep us facing the correct direction. And to that end, we also have these air brakes that are placed high on the airframe. Again, hoping to keep it pointing the right direction because, you know, these things are very big and they're very hard to control. You pretty much want to rely on the aerodynamics, the stock aerodynamics to control it. Now, the trajectories mod tells me where it thinks I'm going to land, but the trajectories mod, well, it gets things wrong. First of all, assumes you're traveling forward, which is great if you're a space plane, not so great if you're a space capsule. So yeah, I use my engines to slow myself down and have trajectories put me right next to the island. Where I, of course, then begin to realize that no, I'm actually going too slow and I'm going to miss. So instead of landing on the mountains, I think it's probably a good idea to actually fire the engines early. And even a small engine firing brings us down much, much, much further back. Still, I'm happy to get as close as I did. Parachutes deployed. ditch the heat shields to reduce the mass, and now we're just going to wait to see how fast I'm going when I hit the ground, or get close to the ground. 8.5 meters per second. I think it would be wise if I were to use my engine just to slow down a touch. After all, I have like 450 meters per second of delta V here, so might as well use it up for something. There we go. Beautiful. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So I've recovered the crew, the visitors to the station, which means more money. Speaking of money, we should probably grab some more contracts. One of the things I noticed is we now have Scan, Iota, Gael, and SETI for resources. I'm presuming it's because I haven't launched a resource probing spacecraft into orbit of either of those. So, yeah, that gives me something to do. Might as well send a resource scanning spacecraft into orbit around Gael. So this is basically the same spacecraft I launched previously, but instead of having a multispectral scanner, it has a resource scanner. It uses the same first stage solid rocket motor, and it's going to use, pretty much the same chassis, the same probe and everything for the upper stage. This booster is of course clocked at about 50% of normal thrust, otherwise you would tend to have things just exploding from overheating. We're heading north because we want to go into a polar orbit, and if you want to scan something, when you absolutely positively have to scan everything, then you need a polar orbit. The engine burns out when I'm still deep inside the atmosphere. Time to start staging. And something kinda goes wrong. Yeah. Someone didn't check their interstage nodes. I attached the rocket, I attached the probe body to an interstage node, which is inconveniently inside that fairing when you use it. Yeah, sadly this whole satellite is going to be a bust. It's not even going to get to space. Poor forgotten satellite. We're sorry, we killed you by accident. It was my mistake. I attached your bits to the other bits, and those bits didn't work, so when you fired your bits, you ended up in bits. So what we need is a quick visit back to the vehicle assembly building. Let's get in there. Let's right-click on the fairing and disable all those pesky interstage nodes. And once again, head skyward to infinity and beyond. Actually, we don't really want to go to infinity, we want to go to Kerbin orbit, because that's where the stuff is. Did I say Kerbin? No, of course I meant Gael, because Kerbin is but a myth, a story told to tell children, to keep them excited about rockets and stuff. These are real kerbals. These kerbals are building actual spacecraft rather than just fake spacecraft. There we go. Now it gets into space. Little bit of a problem with aerodynamic resistance early on, but once we've got that figured out, we're facing the right direction. The solar panels come out, breathing life into the electronics in the form of electrons being pushed around by a potential difference. It may sound technical to you, but it is literally life and death for these electronics. One thing I do know is that for this home planet, the resource scanner needs to be above 300 kilometers. Now that altitude changes depending upon the planet, so you need to kind of figure that stuff out and make sure you can get to the orbits you need. So we do it, we start scanning. It says we've discovered a resource lode. Ooh. Unfortunately, I don't see any point in actually going down to the South Pole to mine stuff that I can literally just buy from the store for free here. I kind of like the buying stuff from the store idea. So yes, this is us. This is us in the Galileo Conquest. This is where we are. We have another couple of moons to scan. We have satellites or space probes in orbit, and we need to keep an eye on them. Until next time, I'm Scott Manley. Fly safe.